All right, so here's a question from the community. A person inserted a Padlet, which we'll look at. Padlets are kind of an interactive element website, and you can bring those into your courses. Here's an example where I have a Padlet inside the course, right? So there's a few different ways you can do that. But what the person has is they've got 20 potential Padlets. And what they want to do is have the person go through the course and then based on their group be assigned to a Padlet and then kind of come back into the flow of the course. So if we thought of it from a story view perspective, they're going to go through the course. Maybe they're at slide 2. Based on their group, we're going to assign them to the Padlet. And then when they come back, we want to bring them back to, say, slide 3. So how do we want to do that? The first thing is like, well, how do I get to the Padlet? So if I create 20 Padlets for 20 different groups, the easiest thing is like at the slide where I want them to go to the Padlet, I can just put a link. So I could do something like this where I have like 20 radial buttons, right? And then you click on the radial button and then that takes you to that. So if I select that, I could go to Padlet A. If I select this, go to Padlet B. Or I could have a single button, and then I get to, on the button, I could have a trigger that says, jump to slide A, which would be Padlet A, jump to slide Padlet A, if, then I need a condition. I think opting for like a single login is better than having an option of 20 things here. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. I'm going to show you a few ideas. How I would do this is first I would insert the Padlet. Now, I created a scene. So if you think about it, you're going to have the flow. We're going to put this Padlet right here at 1.4. So I'm going to go through my course. I get everything. Everybody gets this. I get to 1.4. That's going to take me to my Padlet. I'm going to come over here. And then when I'm done, I'm going to jump back to 1.5. So I kind of detour into my Padlet, and then I come back and I continue my course. There's a few different ways you could do it. You could have 20 different slides, and we'll look at some options and how to insert the Padlet. I would probably have a single slide, and then I jump to that single slide. This way I only need one trigger on this that says jump to slide 2.4. And then on 2.4, I would have all the Padlets on separate layers. So when I got to slide 2.4, it would say show Padlet layer A when this slide starts if, and then we'll use a variable to track that. But let's look at what we can do with the Padlets first to see the differences, and then we'll actually build it as a single slide. So I created some 3 different slides here. So when you come into the Padlet, where did I put that here? So when you come into the Padlet here, I'm just going to use something from the gallery. We're going to use the same one. So let's just use a timeline of the butterfly. So I select timeline of the butterfly here, and I build my gallery. I get a share option up here. So when I click the share option, you can see it says embed in your blog or your website. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And it gives me some text. So within the text, this is like the entire thing, right? And sometimes this text may not work because it's related to something different, right? So if you find that you use this embed text and it doesn't work, you can start to break it down because inside the embed text you have an iframe, right? So you could just use the iframe and that'll be easier. And sometimes this code stuff may interfere with when you're embedding. If that doesn't work, you always have the URL. Now this is all the code, but if you come down here, you can see it's just the URL right here, so you can just grab that. So we're gonna do it 3 different ways. So let's grab the URL. I'm gonna copy it. Let's come back to Storyline. So one is gonna be URL only, right? And let's go ahead and insert that. And we're going to go to Insert. We're going to do a web object. And then I'm going to paste the URL in here. And then you can test the link here if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And then this is a web object. The web object's like a shape, so you can move it, you know, scrunch it up and determine how much of your slide you want to show. So we'll allow the text to peek through. The other thing you could do is you get that code, right? I'm going to grab just the iframe, and we'll see what the difference is here. So we're going to grab it where it says iframe. And we're going to copy that. We're going to come back into Storyline. On this slide, we're going to go, we'll just say this is iframe. And we're going to insert this here. We're going to use insert video. We're going to do from website. And this is where you can embed that code. We're going to do iframe here because it doesn't have all that other gibberish code. And let's see, and I'm going to scrunch this down just so we can see this. Let's see what the iframe looks like. Let's just make it full slide just to see what happens. And then on this one, we're going to do the whole code, right? All that gibberish and everything. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to come over here. Now we're going to grab all of the code, so I can just copy that here. So it's going to grab all this with the text. So let's go ahead. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to insert video from website, and we're going to paste all that code. Now sometimes, like I said, this code that gets pasted in, this extra stuff, it may interfere with your web object. So if it doesn't work, just use the iframe. And we're going to do the same thing. Let's just go ahead and drag this down, and we'll just see how it looks different because the code's going to call different things. Now the thing with iframes is you can't paste iframes in here, or you can't paste web objects and do a preview. You have to publish it. So let's go ahead and publish this project. And I've already did a demo here, so we're going to publish that. All right, so the course is uploaded. I've already got it loaded in here, so let's go ahead and refresh that. Just make sure it's the latest version. Okay, let me shut this down. Okay, so let's see what we have here. So here's the URL only, and you can see how that loads up. That's the timeline, right? And so you can see everything works the way it's supposed to. This is the iframe. So you can see the iframe's a little bit different, right? So the URL, you kind of have a little bit of padding in here, but you kind of eliminate a lot of noise. But look at where it says gallery and all this stuff. With the iframe, it displays a little bit differently, and it's full width, right? And then the whole code, let's see what that did. And that looks kind of like the iframe. It's got this made with Padlet and some other stuff in there. So that gives you an idea. So if you want a little bit less noise, you could just use the URL. And it looks like that displays in here a little larger. In terms of functionality, it looks like it works the same way. So that's kind of how you can insert that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do it as a layer here. So we're going to go back to Storyline, and I'm going to, we can keep these because it doesn't matter. I'm going to go in here, and we're going to call it Padlet Layers. And I'm going to do, we'll say A, because we're going to have 3 groups, A, and then we'll duplicate that. Let's do B, and we'll duplicate that, and we'll do C. All right, so we have 3 groups here. And then I'm going to come into layer A. I'm just going to come back here. Let's just grab some code. We're going to say, let's say first one is we're going to do timeline of the Grammys, right? So I'm going to do the share link. I'm just going to do the URL. So we're going to embed. Let's just copy the URL. And then we're going to go to timeline here. We're going to, on the layer A, we're going to insert video, or we're actually going to insert a web object, and we're going to use the URL and hit OK. And so that's going to load up here. We're going to fill up the. You can see where that padding comes from too, so you can play around with the web object. Okay, so that's on A. We're going to come to B. I'm going to pause this. I'm going to just put 3 different ones on here. All right, so I went ahead. I've got a timeline. I've got a notice board, and then I've got a discussion. So we're going to see how those work. So the thing here is I've got a single slide, right? And so I want to come to the single slide, and then I have to determine which layer I want to show. So I have to have a way to understand which group you're assigned to. And if we come back to this, we think about this. I'm going through my course at slide 1.4. I want to come to this Padlets layer, right? Go through the Padlet, and then I want to come back to the course, maybe go to 1.5. So having a single slide is nice because everything's controlled in there, and then the triggers and everything is a lot less work. If you had 20 slides, then you have to have 20 triggers and manage all of those slides and all that. But it's just based on what you want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and just use a single slide. I'm going to actually delete these since we don't need those. So this is my Padlet, right? So I'm going to use a couple ways you could do this. One is you could have a light box, and a light box would display on top of your course. So if you wanted a light box, you could, go to Padlet. You could have a trigger, and then that would open up a light box. And so basically, you would just have a trigger here, and what you would do is you would say, light box slide, and we'll just choose that Padlet slide. Nothing's going to happen on there when the user clicks button 1. So we'll preview this project so you can see what that light box slide would look like. So if I come here and I click on it, this is how the Padlet would launch in here. You may like that, you may not. It's just a matter of how you want to do the trigger, right? So do you want to display the slide this way, or do you want to jump to the slide? So it's just a matter of what you want to do. The one thing is you could see if I click this and it opens up the slide in here, when I'm done, I close it and I'm back in my course. So that is kind of a nice benefit of the light box, but it sits on top of your course. If you want to jump to the slide, then you would come into that. You'd end up seeing something that's kind of inside your course. So that's just a matter of what you want to do. We're going to go ahead and go to the slide. So how do we get to the slide? So what we want to do is we click on this. We're going to come to this slide here. What we're going to do is automatically jump to the Padlet. And I like to have it this way. I could have a trigger on the next button here, like jump to Padlet slide, jump back. But then I kind of like just have a next trigger, and then I just have this as my Padlet slide, because they'll jump here and then they'll immediately leave. But then if I want to delete this slide, if I want to do something, it's just messing on this slide and not necessarily changing the triggers on this slide. So I'm going to put a trigger on here, and I'm just going to say jump to, or jump to slide. We'll just say the Padlet slide right here when the timeline starts of this slide. So let's see what happens if we preview this project. I'm going through, we're done. See, we hit next, and then you can see it jumped to the Padlet layers, right? And then from the Padlet layers, I'm going to jump. Since the Padlet layer, if we look at it, it's going to be here. We want to jump back to slide 1.5. So on this slide, I'm just going to go on to the next button here, which is here, right? So jump to slide, and we're going to say jump to that specific slide, which is that 1.5. And I'm going to get rid of the previous button, or maybe the previous button. I don't want to go to the previous slide because we jumped away from a slide, so it would be kind of weird. It would just keep jumping back and forth. So our previous slide is actually going to be 1.3. So these are hard-coded in here. So let's go ahead and preview this and see if this is actually working. And then what we'll do is do the triggers to get to the layers and stuff. All right, so we're here. I go next. I should jump to my Padlets layer. If I go backwards, it should jump to here. This goes next to the Padlets layer. I go forward, and it jumps to here. So now what we need to do is display the Padlets. So how do we do that? you have to figure out what group a person's in and assign them. So what I like to do is at the front end, so it seems less messy, at the front end, what I would do is, get a way for them to pick their group. And again, I don't know how you're going to assign those groups, but I would do something like this. Like I would insert a variable here. So we're going to insert a text variable, so input, and we're just going to put it here. You type in your name, right? Add your name. We're going to change the name of this variable to name. Hit OK. And then we're going to let you choose a group. You could have them type in a letter group, but they may type it wrong, so I like to hard code that. And since you have a lot of choices, you could use a radial button to an input. We're going to do the smaller radial button. Let's see what that looks like here. Yeah, so we're going to do this. We'll go A, and I'm just going to copy this. And we're going to B, and then C. So that's a little bit smaller than having a bunch of buttons. It's nice and clean. And you can only select one. So if I preview this slide, you can see I can only select one. I can't select multiple groups, right? So it looks really nice and clean. So what we're going to do now is, this is a variable that's going to collect the name. This variable right here is going to assign the group. So we're going to create a variable. So let's come in here and create a variable. And we're going to call this group. And we'll make it a text variable. Hit OK. So what we're going to do here is, when you click on A, right, we're going to create a trigger, and we're going to say adjust variable. So adjust variable, and we're going to say set group to value A when user clicks on the radio button 1. We should actually call this, I'll call this RB-A, RB-B, RB-C. It's always good to title things, right? Because then I can see A to A. So, and we're going to copy this trigger. Copy it. Let's go ahead and select these two radio buttons and hit paste. Now I have to do is, okay, B is going to set the value to B, and C is going to set the value to C. And then what we're going to do is, we're going to have you enter your name, select your group, and then we're going to come in here and we're going to say, hey, welcome. Insert a reference here to the variable welcome name. So you are in group, and then I'm going to insert a reference again and put the group there. You are in group. So this links to those variables. So let's go ahead and preview this. So what we have now is, we know what your name is and we know what group you're going to be in. So we're going to go ahead and preview this scene. And we're going to type in Tom. I'm in group A. Go to the next slide. Hey, welcome Tom, you are in group A. Let me go backwards. Choose group B. You're in group B. You're in group C. So now this variable, I know what group I'm in, right? So I'm in group C, group A, group B. So that's working the way we wanted. Now we have information. I know what group you're in. When it goes to this slide, it's going to, when it gets to this slide, we're jumping to, let me just type that in here so we can see it. Jump to Padlet slide, so we know what's going on, right? So we're jumping to that Padlet slide. When I get to the Padlet slide, I don't have a layer exposed yet. So I'm going to say show layer A when the timeline of the slide starts, right? On the condition that variable group is equal to the value of A. And I'm going to copy this, paste it. Show layer B if it's equal to B. Show layer C here if it's equal to C. So it's going to jump here, and it's going to choose the Padlet I need to be in. When I hit the next button, it's going to jump to the slide. So this should work. And then we have one last thing to do. So let's preview this entire project. And Tom, I'm in group A. Hit next. Welcome, Tom. You're in group A. Go through the course. Next slide jumps to Padlet A. We can see a web object is not working. But if I go backwards, it's here. If I come in here, I'm seeing my layer. And then I'm in my course. So that looks like it's working. One last thing we want to do, since this Lightbox slide, or if you use the Lightbox or you jump to the Padlet and jump back out, you may not want this to display in your menu, right? Because if I preview this project, I'm going to see it here in the menu. So I don't want it in the menu. So I don't want the people to click. The only way they're going to get to this is by jumping to that from this slide, right? So I'm going to go into my player settings, and I'm just going to disable that in the menu. So what I want to do is when I look at the menu here, I want to take this and just remove that. And then we're going to remove everything. So now they don't see it in the menu. It's still there. They just don't see it on this menu here, right? All right, so let's go ahead and hit OK. Let's publish this and let's see if this works. So we're going to publish it to review. And this should work. I should have 3 different layers available to me. And again, this is just one way to do that. There's a number of ways to do it, but I thought, I'd kind of flesh this out a little bit as a teaching moment here. So let's go ahead and view this project. All right, so I'm going to come in here, Tom, select my group A, click. I'm in group A, click, click, and it loads up my Padlet layer for A, right? If I come back here and I change it to B, and we're going to jump in here, then you can see it loaded up a different Padlet. If I come back here, change it to C, I'm going to go to Padlet, and you can see it loaded up a different layer. So everything, the Padlet, everything's in there. And then when I click next, it goes in here. So using that single slide's a lot nicer because it gives you more control, right? You don't have to do 20 triggers and 20 slides and stuff. So you can put everything on a layer and then just determine how you want to do that. So this is one way to do it. It just depends on what you're doing in the course. Hopefully this isn't too long for you, but I thought I'd flesh it out a little bit as I build this and then explain what to do, especially for people who haven't used variables who might want to look at this thread later.